We sit here, you hear the race speeches because they feel that's what you want to hear today. Everything in America is not always about race.
Armstrong Williams earlier this week at Al Sharpton's National Action Network conference in New York City getting booed for stating the obvious, that everything in America is not about race. Yet that continues to be an issue the left continues to push during this election year. Of course, a new Gallup poll finds that race relations in our nation are at an all-time low under President Obama. A bit ironic, since he was supposed to be the great unifier. For more, let's welcome in the aforementioned Armstrong Williams, nationally syndicated columnist, owner of broadcast television stations, and host of the Right Side Forum. Armstrong, you're on the right side of this issue. You must have been surprised to get that reaction the other day during that seminar with Al Sharpton's group.
Somewhat, well, thank you for having me. Somewhat surprised, but what you did see that at the end of the speech, some people stood up. There was a resounding round of applause as I finished my speech. So the way it started out is certainly not the way it ended up, JD.
Well, that's good to know. Unfortunately, the way things are ending up with President Obama is a deterioration in race relations. That new Gallup poll shows that increase has gone up. In 2 years' time, 35% of Americans are concerned now about race relations, as opposed to just 17% in 2014. When you take a look at this, there have been events, but how much is this due, in your mind, to perhaps some of the rhetoric utilized by our commander-in-chief?
You know, I'm not going to lay it all at the feet of our commander-in-chief, but I will say this is something that has happened over the last 7 years when President Obama made that shocking statement that if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin and would be subjected to the same racism and bigotry in this society. When President Obama, without knowing the facts or the details, sent his Justice Department and others into Ferguson to already cast doubt on law enforcement before it was taken to the grand jury. I mean, these kind of momentous occasions remind people, are you kidding me? I mean, anybody watching that, President Obama making that statement about Trayvon Martin had this shuttle in their shoes. It was just very disappointing because most Americans felt that we'd come much further than that, and they were shocked and appalled that the president would say that. And these things are not easily forgotten. It's a very interesting situation, and you know, in my view, I find it so illogical for us to continue to support one party overwhelmingly as if the black community is some kind of a monolith, because they're not. My critique of this voting pattern, JD, is that we as a community have not reaped the gains that sort of necessitate the level of blind loyalty to the Democratic Party.
You mentioned that fact, that blind loyalty, and obviously you and others have been voices for change and reassessment, and yet from the Democrats you get the same old routine playing the race card. For example, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on the stump talking race. Let's listen to them, then I'd like to get your reaction.
The last few years also have laid bare deep fault lines in America. They've revealed how frayed our bonds of trust and respect have become. Despite our best efforts and our highest hopes, America's long struggle with racism is far from finished.
That these Republican governors would show some mercy and not try to bring us back to Jim Crow days.
Well, it seems that Hillary and Bernie were trying to out-pander each other, especially Bernie with that crack about Jim Crow days. Is that what you were addressing when you spoke at the National Action Network? 40 seconds.
I heard it. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, in that regard, are the new race hustlers. They're no different than these civil rights leaders who continue to blame all the woes for blacks on racism and the Republican Party. And you got to go back to that song of Janet Jackson, "What have you done for me lately?" What do you have to show for all these years of voting for people like Hillary and Bernie Sanders? Little or nothing. Ferguson, Baltimore, riots, disenfranchisement, resentment, hatefulness. And I think black America is finally waking up to the fact that the Clintons and the Sanders cannot take their vote for granted anymore, and they must earn it like everybody else. And they're willing to give Donald Trump a shot, which has been shown in polls, including in the black community.
And that's something we're going to keep our eyes on, and we'll have you back real soon. Armstrong Williams tonight from Washington, D.C. You have our thanks. And when we come back, oh, wait till you see it. A phone call between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump? We'll have it for you next.